Doesn't only have to be sun damage, right? Like it could be damage from pollution or smoking or just age and time. They would actually take those fern leaves and brew them as a tea and drink them, to get internal sun protection. And when it comes to cancer, it seems to actually help with tumor suppression. And so, scientifically, these antioxidants actually are reversing the damage that the sun is causing. But then it's got other antioxidants that we know are really good for skin repair, things like green tea, blueberries, cacao extract. It's got some probiotics in it.
Welcome to Derm-It Trotter. Don't swear about skincare, where host Dr. Shannon C. Trotter, a board-certified dermatologist, sits down with fellow dermatologists and skincare experts to separate fact from fiction and simplify skincare. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Derm-It Trotter, Don't Swear About Skincare. I have Dr. Noreen Galaria. She's a board-certified dermatologist with a laser and cosmetic fellowship and has been practicing for over 20 years. After spending time in an academic setting, she was training residents and doing research in that area and also publishing. She then transitioned into private practice 13 years ago in the DC area. She's also the CEO and founder of Inner Glow Vitamins, and it's an actual dermatologist as well as plastic surgeon developed brand of nutraceuticals. So welcome to the podcast, Noreen. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. We're going to touch on something I think people have been wanting, this concept, sunscreens. We talk about how do we protect ourselves from the sun. I think everyone just thinks, oh, sunscreen, right? Or, oh, I'm going to wear longer sleeves, or I'm going to put on a hat or my sunglasses. But kind of what we want to talk about today, this concept, can we really develop, sunscreen or sun protection in a pill? And specifically, as we get into that a little bit more, we want to talk about, the concept of antioxidants, because I know people out there know about this. They've said, oh, take your, antioxidants in a pill form or take a handful of blueberries in the morning. But I want to get a little bit more into detail about what that can mean for our audience out there in sun protection. So I'm going to have you kick it off with just what are antioxidants? And can you explain kind of what they are and how they're helpful for us in the skin?
Yeah, sure. So antioxidants are basically these ingredients that can help us to either slow down damage in our skin or even maybe reverse damage. And the damage doesn't only have to be sun damage, right? Like it could be damage from pollution or smoking or just age and time. And I think a lot of people, at least a lot of my patients, when I talk about antioxidants, it's kind of this nebulous thing, and maybe it sounds like chemicals. And so I really want to take a second to really talk about what antioxidants are, and I guess, where they come from. Because really what an antioxidant is something that usually comes from a fruit or a vegetable. So it's generally a plant product. And what's amazing is if you imagine like a plant that's growing outside and it's growing like in the sun and it's got little pests that are, trying to eat it. A plant really has to, literally bloom where it's planted. And so over eons, plants have kind of figured out how to make these defense mechanisms against things like sun and pests and, maybe poor soil. And those defense mechanisms that a plant uses to protect itself in nature are actually antioxidants. And those antioxidants are the very thing in plants that we then harness to give ourselves benefit. And so I guess I really want to start by saying that, the majority of antioxidants come from plant or, fruit and vegetable sources. And they are things that have been developed through time for a plant to really take care of itself.
So it's pretty cool. We can really capture, what nature is doing to help ourselves. When you talk about antioxidants, then being, plant derived and protecting, the plant, how it, uses them in that way. What exactly is an antioxidant doing then for maybe like in the skin with our skin cells that we would maybe want to take it and have it be helpful for us as well?
So, if we take a look, for example, at the antioxidant Polypodium, which is one of the ones we're going to talk about. Again, I think the scientific names sometimes, make people feel like it's a chemical. Polypodium is actually a fern, and it's a fern that grows near the equator. in Central and even South America. And what we realized from looking at tribes who used to live near the equator is that they would actually take those fern leaves and brew them as a tea
Mm.
and drink them, to get internal sun protection. And it's been happening for hundreds of years. And so probably in the 1970s, dermatologists and other researchers started looking at polypodium and saying, okay, well, clearly these people are getting some benefit from drinking
Mhm.
these fern leaves. What is it actually that this fern does? And what they realized was, in general, the sun does three things that we are really trying to prevent from happening. The first is, of course, it causes sunburn. The second is, it causes a lot of our photoaging, the aging that comes from the sun. And the third big thing is, of course, it causes skin cancer. And what researchers realized was that Polypodium, the fern, has ingredients in it that actually prevent all three of these things that the sun can do. And, I guess really what we're looking at is if you're looking at sunburn, it's got these antioxidants that are called phenols. And the phenols will basically stop the damage, the free radical damage that causes the redness in the skin. And when we're looking at aging, the fern will actually help to prevent the breakdown of collagen. I mean, all of us are always trying to protect our
Mhm.
collagen.
Oh yeah.
And, Polypodium has been shown to not only protect your collagen, but also your elastin, which is kind of
Mhm.
what gives our skin its bounce. And when it comes to cancer, it seems to actually help with tumor suppression. And so, scientifically, these antioxidants actually are reversing the damage that the sun is causing.
So it's kind of fascinating again that we're really looking at a plant that's already sort of figured it out, and now we can use it, in our own way to help our skin. So, people that want to use it or take it, is it something that they typically would take in a pill form? You mentioned like brewing it like a tea. Is there one way that if people were interested in adding this into their routine that you would actually recommend, or you think there's evidence for that might work the best to see the benefits that we would want?
Yeah, I think the way that it was harvested in nature to be brewed as a tea, that's something that most of us, unless we're living in Central America, just don't have access to.
Mhm.
And so, and it's uncertain what dose you're really getting, right?
Mhm.
So probably since I would say the early 1980s, um, people have figured out how to take the polypodium, and you have to be careful if you're going to take polypodium because it's really the leaves that have all the protection. So if you take polypodium and you're taking the stem or the root, well, you're not going to get the same protection because obviously it's the leaves that really at the equator need to protect themselves from the sun
Mhm.
that's beating down. And so you're looking for a source that uses the leaf of the polypodium fern, and you're looking for a dose around 280 milligrams, which is a pretty readily available dose. There don't seem to be any side effects to it, but I will say the benefits are seen around 280. So don't take 1,000 milligrams and don't take 2,000. Like, everything
More
is
is
like
better, right?
mega dosed out
Yeah.
there, right? And when it comes to the body, more is not always really better. Like you can
Right.
actually repeat this. So we have a lot of studies in kids where, after 2 or 3 hours, they can take, yeah, our gummies, which are like polypodium gummies. They can take them, the same way they reapply sunscreen, like they can kind of top off. And that I think works very well. But a huge dose at one time is not as effective as, small doses. Similar to if you think about the concept of using sunscreen and reapplying it through the day, you can't just put on enough sunscreen at 8 a.m. to last you all day. And polypodium is actually a bit similar to that.
You've probably disappointed some people because I think everyone
Yeah.
looks at an easy fix. They're like, can I just take it and be good all day? Because that is a complaint, obviously, with using sunscreen. It's just the burden, right? The time it takes. Oh gosh, I got to reapply. And so, same concept. It's interesting to see that would apply for something like the polypodium. So, the people are like sitting there like thinking, okay, this sounds interesting. We've, looked at a
Yeah.
plant that's been able to protect itself. Maybe, a supplement might be right for me. I think the question a lot of people might be asking, and I think it's helpful not to obviously go too deep into this information, but compared to maybe other supplements, I think a lot of people out there think, oh, supplements, like, they're regulated differently, but do we really have data to suggest that this is useful? And is there really merit to it? And I think that's what's unique about polypodium, maybe it's just what we have available. Do you mind just commenting on that a little bit to kind of help alleviate some of the concerns people might think there just isn't any justification scientifically?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the nice thing about Polypodium is that unlike a supplement like, I don't know, even like vitamin D, let's say, that you have to take for a while or you have to do a blood test to see am I at the right level.
Hmm.
There are a lot of studies that show that Polypodium works within an hour. And
Wow.
so you don't actually have to wait a long time. And I will have a lot of my patients say to me, my little ones always burn, or I rock climb and I golf and I never reapply. And when I take this supplement, I find I can be in the sun comfortably a lot longer. And, our own studies on Inner Glow, when we look at the gummy, we have done a lot of studies, through independent labs and other doctors that show, like, for example, if you sunburn the inside of somebody's arm and then you give them two gummies, which is the full dose, you wait 1 hour and sunburn their other arm, there is a noticeable difference in how much they sunburn. And so, we have studies that have been, presented at our the academy meetings, which is our dermatology meeting, and they've been published in a lot of our dermatology journals. And they do show fairly immediate effect. And so I think if somebody is wondering if it works, I will say there are dozens and dozens of studies on Polypodium. Even personally, I know we've done a lot of studies on our Polypodium,
Hmm.
but people can also almost notice the difference themselves, which is nice. Like unlike other vitamins, you will likely see a difference.
I think that's, the proof is in the pudding, right? On some of that
Yeah.
stuff. And it's nice too. I mean, we often all buy things out there, right? We're probably not even sure what the studies are. For those that, we have listeners out there that, they live and breathe dermatology or they're in medicine. They're like, is this something I could actually look up and see how it's been validated or proven to work? I think that's what's also wonderful about this as an opportunity, for a patient to use it. Now, would you, if you have somebody come in, they're like, okay, I've kind of followed you along. I think there's value here. I want to do this. Is it something that you think is appropriate for just about anyone to take, or is there somebody you wouldn't recommend that it would be beneficial for? Or how do you decide who's a good candidate for it?
So, I guess from a safety perspective, we do have safety studies we're working on now that show that anyone over the age of 2 can take it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, moms love this for their kids who are at
Mm-hmm.
the beach. I
Have
love
to
it for
chase
my
them down to get
teens.
sunscreen on. You can add this
Yes.
in with that. That's great. Yeah.
My cross country runners, my soccer player, like, they apply sunscreen once, and even with their mom being a dermatologist, they'll take two gummies because it's like eating candy almost,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
they will not reapply their sunscreen. So, from a safety perspective, it seems like not just with our gummies, but there's a lot of studies out there for children with eczema because polypodium actually seems to help with eczema, and large studies of hundreds of patients that show that it seems to be safe in doses double ours in children over the age of 2, and seems to show some improvement in barrier repair for kids who are taking this.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as a patient coming in, I kind of describe this to patients as an additional tool in your toolbox, in your sun protection toolbox. So the nice thing about polypodium is you don't have to take it daily. So I'm not telling my patients, hey, take this vitamin from now until whatever the end of your life, to protect you from the sun. It can just be like a Memorial Day to some, Labor Day type of vitamin, or it can be I'm going to the beach for a week. I'm going to do it then, and the rest of the time, maybe sunscreen alone is enough, or a sun shirt or sunglasses. So I really describe it as an additional tool. So I know my patients, for example, don't wear a sun protection shirt every day or maybe a hat every day, but they pull it out when they know they're going to be in the sun. So for a lot of patients, they can pull out this supplement in a very similar manner. When you know you're going to be in the sun, you take it an hour before going outside. And then there's some patients, maybe skin cancer patients or patients who are especially fair who just find they want to take it, on a more prolonged basis.
You mentioned too before, like how eventually it's sort of, wears off or wears down, just like, sunscreen. How often
Yeah.
do you have to retake it throughout the day? Is the recommendation that you typically make based on how long we think it may work to help protect the skin?
So, it seems like our studies and other studies show somewhere between 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
And it's not like an on off switch, right?
Hmm.
So it's like the protection starts to wane. Um, and so I tell my patients, listen, when you think about starting to reapply sunscreen, that's a great time to maybe pop an additional gummy.
Okay. That's kind of good because it can get you on that same rhythm of doing all
Exactly.
the sun protection at once. And I think I really want to highlight what you mentioned. This isn't a replacement because, a lot of people are like, hey, I want something that's going to basically, replace sunscreen for me. And I try to explain to people, and you probably do this too, we're not really there yet. Like you highlight, this is just an additional tool to provide that protection. So you're more completely protected, if you will, but it's not something that we're saying, hey, do this in place of sunscreen. This is a nice add in to everything else that you're doing to protect yourself.
Yeah, I wish, but definitely not. Like,
One
would
day,
it be
maybe.
nice? Would it be nice, like sunscreen in a pill?
Yes.
Yes, the concept. I know people use the term internal sunscreen, but um, it's different because one, we have no SPF measurement really for these
Hmm.
internal sunscreens or internal protection because it protects you. But the nice thing, I guess, the one additional benefit is it does actually repair, which sunscreen doesn't really do, right? So when you take
Hmm.
in polypodium you get this repair mechanism, but you definitely do not get the same amount of SPF that you would get from applying something on the outside.
So when we talked about it, being helpful, kind of, where people can protect themselves and maybe stay out a little bit longer, where it gives that sort of durability maybe to the skin. You mentioned
Mhm.
also kind of from the anti-aging benefit. Does that come from really the antioxidant power that you feel behind, that's behind polypodium? Is that where we think that rests as well?
Yeah, there's something in our skin called a matrix metalloproteinase, right? And what it does is it seems to block this, and that's one of the things that really breaks down our collagen and elastin. And so I think that there's several specific antioxidants. The beauty of polypodium is it's not just one antioxidant; it's actually multiple antioxidants. And so each antioxidant is kind of targeting a different part of our sun damage.
And so, in with the multiple antioxidants or with the phenols, so is there one that tends to be more important or more valuable? Or is it really collectively how we think they may work together? Is that kind of the thought behind it?
I think it's kind of collective. I think if you took out some of these antioxidants that are, readily found in other fruits, like, for example, blueberries or green tea, which are amazing antioxidants, I think it's the fact that it has multiple ones of these all together mixed in
Mhm.
that make it a little more potent for sun protection.
So one of the things I wanted to talk with you more about, we keep talking about polypodium, but what really makes it so special? Is it sort of this cocktail antioxidants or what's actually like what makes up polypodium?
Yeah, so Polypodium actually, as a fern, is a little antioxidant powerhouse, actually. So if we look at some of the antioxidants that are in it, kind of the top three that come to mind, there's something called flavonoids that Polypodium has. And those are antioxidants that we usually find in things we know are helpful, like berries and dark chocolate. So,
Good.
yeah, the good stuff. And so, it's got a similar type of antioxidant to that, but then it's also got something called a polyphenol, which is the type of antioxidant you might find in green tea or you might find in grapes and red wine. And then it's also got something called glycosides in it, which is what we find in things like soybeans and, the skin of apples and pears. And so I think really the benefit of polypodium comes from the fact that this one fern packs such an antioxidant punch, which is why it can really affect so many steps of the sun damage in our skin.
Yeah, it's impressive to think like how Mother Nature, helps itself. When you just think about
Yes.
this plant and kind of its evolution and trying to survive on land and deal with sun exposure. And it's kind of what we're all trying to do, right? Live our lives, be active in our sports, or if we love to go out on a walk, or we work outdoors, just thinking how we kind of, deal with the sun in our own way. It's nice that we can really, capture what nature's doing to help us too. And kind of with polypodium, are there other antioxidants besides that one that you would recommend that would be helpful for sun protection as well, or just repair of skin that's been damaged by the sun?
Yeah, so I think as far as immediate sun protection, like we're talking about when you're outside, I think polypodium is great. In our gummy, we combine it with a little bit of niacinamide, which is a B vitamin, which is also known to do a lot of cellular repair. But, we did a lot of research on what antioxidants really benefit the skin. And one of the, we have what we call our defense line. And in that, the second vitamin is something called age defense, which we describe more as if the gummy is more protection from acute sun damage, the age defense is really acute and chronic. And so it's still got polypodium because we feel
Mhm.
like that's a big player, but then it's got other antioxidants that we know are really good for skin repair, things like green tea, blueberries, cacao extract. It's got some probiotics in it, some resveratrol. It's got ginger, turmeric. So the antioxidants that we know help to repair sun damage, we've kind of combined, the 14 most potent ones and put them into the age defense tablet. And the one thing I will say is, people ask, and this is a question that comes up a lot. Well, my grandma never had sunscreen, and my great grandma never used polypodium, and why do we need it now? And I will say that what's interesting is, the skin cancer, unfortunately, we know is on the rise, even though our ozone is repairing itself a little bit. And one of the things that is happening is that year after year, we seem to be having the hottest year on record. And so since 2020, every year has been hotter than the last, and 2025 is projected to be the hottest year ever on the planet. And so I think when people get frustrated and think about why is it that I get sunburned so easily and my
Mhm.
great grandma didn't, or she didn't need sunscreen, I will also just say it's not your fault. It is, the sun is different and the heat is
Yeah.
different now. And so we do need more tools in our toolbox than we used to have.
Well, we've kind of alluded to this a little bit when we've talked a little bit about, your company and some of the supplements you have with Inner Glow. Do you mind talking a little bit about what makes some of your supplements so special and a little bit more about the company just in general?
Sure, thank you. So we're a company that is really developed and researched by myself, a dermatologist and a plastic surgeon. And the reason that we really created this was because we, at the time when this kind of was an idea in our minds, we were practicing at the University of Utah. And a lot of people don't know, but Utah actually has the highest rate of skin cancer in America. And so we were seeing a lot of patients come in and they were looking for just something additional that they could do because they were getting frustrated. And I was looking for things that would be, I'm going to say, developed the same way we develop our medicines, right?
Mhm.
Like in the supplement industry, there's no FDA regulation of supplements. They can be made anywhere. You don't really have to vet what's put in them. And so we really set out to make supplements that would be made in an FDA registered facility. They're not regulated, but at least we can make them in places where they, could make medications, for example.
Mhm.
We want something that's third party verified. I source everything by hand. Every ingredient has research and scientific backing. And then once we combine them into our supplements, we actually do clinical studies on them to prove that they work. And currently, we don't have a huge line. We have three things that I think really work well. We have our hair supplement, which has all 21 ingredients that I think we need for good hair growth. And then we have this defense line, which is the gummy for sun protection. And then if you want protection and repair, the age defense vitamin.
Well, it's just exciting. I hate to say that we look to Mother Nature for these answers, but it's amazing that she often provides them on multiple fronts, right? We see that in
Yes.
across the spectrum in healthcare. And now I think for our listeners out there, they'll think, sun protection, no different in the value of polypodium and what it can give, patients that are out there. So we can just, live smarter in the sun. I think that's obviously our goal for everyone.
Yes. No, I always say enjoy your time outdoors, right? Just do
Mhm.
it with a little bit of protection on board.
I think people are sometimes shocked to hear dermatologists, say that. But I always tease my patients. We have conferences and meetings in the craziest, sunniest places.
Yes.
We're not against the sun. I said we're just against, being out in the sun where you might get too much of it or not protect yourself. It's just like anything else, just doing things in moderation and doing it smarter. So we're just
Right.
here to help give you the tools. And I think you've definitely given people some ideas and tools now to add to that toolbox to really help them have effective sun protection and really enjoy life. So for our listeners out there, if they want to find you, Noreen, where can they locate you online or get more information about Inner Glow?
So our website is innerglowvitamins.com. And then our handles are all easy, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, it's all at Innerglow Vitamins.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. This has been great. I think a lot of people are going to be researching this and tempted to protect themselves in ways they'd never imagined, even if we don't have the sunscreen pill yet. So
I
thanks
know.
again for coming on and sharing your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it too.
And stay tuned for the next episode of Derm-It Trotter, Don't Swear About Skincare.
Thanks for listening to Derm-It Trotter. For more about skincare, visit dermittrotter.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with anyone who needs a little skincare sanity. Until next time, stay skin smart.